Hey YouTube, Petey Twofinger here. I'm going to shut the air conditioner off. Yeah, now it's going to get nice and hot in here. So today I wanted to talk about music, which if you are enlightened or sensitive, you realize that music is subjective. That's the true beauty of music, lies in its subjectivity. Because if we all went around whistling the same tune, it'd be a pretty boring place to live, wouldn't it? What's the worst part about music? People make it. Talking about music is like whistling about chickens. These are all cute little things that I say when we discuss music. So my history of bands and artists that I love. When I was a kid, my dad worked for Volvo, and we always had a brand new Volvo because they gave us one, and we would travel a lot, especially in the summer. We do these road trips, travel all over the Midwest, and then stay in a hotel while he would go and do what he had to do as a regional parts manager. So in the Volvo, he played Harry Nilsson cassettes. Now, Nilsson was a solo vocal artist who God touched Nilsson and said, "You are going to be my voice. You have the golden 5-octave range." He was an incredible singer-songwriter who could transmute a level, a depth, a weight to his music, melancholy, sadness, and sorrow that could be expressed through this man's voice. Could move you, could shake you to your very core. He was such a talented guy. Had a really sad life, a really sad childhood. He was an alcoholic, huge bags of cocaine. Best friends with John Lennon, best friends with Ringo Starr. He was one of the original Hollywood vampires. When Lennon was assassinated, Lennon produced an album of him, and he was coughing up blood. He'd ruined his voice from pushing it so much, and then Lennon is assassinated, and Nilsson got out of the business. And there's a whole thing about that assassination with Todd Rundgren. If you don't know about that, look into it, which would kind of go back to why Nilsson quit the business and became anti-handgun or gun control advocate, is what Nilsson spent the rest of his life working towards. My brother met him at a Beatle Fest. He had was a picture of a handgun with a red line through it at this booth, and my brother got his autograph. It says, "To Eric, remember Christmas." I'm getting emotional here. So, listening to Harry Nilsson, which was John Lennon's favorite artist, arguably the record company he was a genius, Nilsson was. They couldn't figure out how to handle him. And his fans didn't know how to take him either. He was changing his name constantly. And I'm not going to concern myself with time. I'm going to go ahead and tell the whole story here. His name it's not pronounced Nielsen. It's Nilsson. Everybody calls him Nilsson. Lennon called him Nilsson. It's Nilsson. And it bothered him. On his first 45, they wanted to call him Johnny Rocket. And he continued changing the spelling of his name on his albums. And they kept getting more and more bizarre, to the point it was spelled Knilson with a K in front of it, which in all rights, they would have to put that in a different place in the record store, right? But I digress. Nilsson was my first musical love. And that melancholy thing that he can do, any artist that can write with that depth of sorrow is something that I will be drawn to, because that type of music can really be helpful to you when you're at a low point. So, moving on, we had a turntable. My brother was really a movie person more than a music person. He would see a movie and then dress like the lead character and mimic them for a month or so. He began buying James Bond album soundtracks because, of course, he was a huge James Bond fan, And this was back when the great James Bond movies were being released at the theater. Spy Who Loved Me, Moonraker, that stuff was coming out. So when we got to Live and Let Die, it was like, whoa. So that led us to the Beatles, because Paul McCartney did the music for Live and Let Die. And starting out at the Beatles with I Want to Hold Your Hand, and then you go through their career, and the post-LSD Beatles, that's the stuff that I really love. When you talk Beatles, a lot of times people think I Want to Hold Your Hand, Ed Sullivan, Black and White Beatles. Well, that's not Beatles to me. That's kids stuff. After the Revolver album, Within You, Without You, Walrus, A Day in the Life, at the Abbey Road medley, that's the Beatles to me. Getting into their solo stuff, some of the Lennon stuff was all right. And some of the McCartney stuff was good too, that Mulligan Tire. Quickly finding classic rock, and then Pink Floyd, which I was 14 when I developed my obsession with Pink Floyd. And all of their solo albums except for Broken China. I wasn't really the pretty boy Floyd. I didn't like him as much. I loved all the solo albums, including Fictitious Sports. I'm a Mineralist. I Was Wrong. Those are some great songs. Nick Mason's going on tour, and I'm like, dude, like you he won't. Maybe he will. You never know. You could never guess. I remember on the post tour they opened up with Astronomy Domine, and it was just like faucets. I was crying. Never thought I would hear that, and it was really good too. Really good. But Pink Floyd is like, it's bleak. It's too much of that. This music is about madness, and it's about that you're not really in control of your destiny, and that everything is hopeless. So it's poison, it's bile, it's bitter, it's cancer. That music is. In '88, I discovered Adrian Belew, which was like the anti-Pink Floyd. He was more like Jesus in his lyrics. It's like coming out of the Dark Ages into salvation, listening to anything associated with Adrian Belew, King Crimson. I really loved his solo stuff. All of his solo albums. Really thoroughly absorbed all of that to the point where, and when I say I'm listening to this, I mean like listening to this nonstop, to the point where you know all the lyrics, you know every note, you know the gaps of silence in between the songs, like really fully absorbing it. And then that was the first artist that I was able to really see live. So obsessively going to the shows. We went to his house. We are on a first name basis with Adrian. He knows my wife and I. I've built him equipment, just little electronic circuits. He signed one of my guitar pedals. He signed my Strat. We sat front row with his wife sitting next to us at the dress rehearsal for the Inner Revolution tour. So, yeah, Belew was great. I still love his stuff. I kind of wish that he would write songs. He's on this flux kick. And that stuff, there's 3 volumes. I've only listened to the first volume. And I was sick when I listened to it, and a lot of it was that melancholy stuff, and I couldn't handle it. I could not listen to it because I was emotionally, I was in a bad place. I was really sick in 2016. So coming through Adrian Belew, I discovered Music of Faith No More, Mike Patton. That led me to Mr. Bungle. And then there was around Y2K, the computer was big. It was this type of computer, not this type of computer, the evil iPhone. So I'm not a fan of that private thing. I do support computer being in the open, or to me, laptops and cell phones are for porn and scheming and doing stuff behind people's back. All that private stuff, marriage wrecking stuff that goes on. This is like, I've got nothing to hide. I run the computer next to my wife. I'm not looking at porn all day here. It is what it is, you know. And around Y2K, it was a popular thing to hang out at music message boards where you would type full sentences. It wasn't this emojis and, you know, one-word sentences. And if you type a paragraph, people attack you. Too long, didn't read. All that type of mentality, you know. So I was involved in that, and that led me to discover some Patton-related music, which was basically all of the side projects he did, with the exception of Peeping Tom. I'm not a hip-hop or a rap guy, but I really enjoyed Tomahawk and Phantomus quite a bit. We were able to see him. We only saw Bungo once. It was great. But we saw Tomahawk every time they came to town. The same thing with Phantomus. We were able to catch Phantomus 5 times, and they were incredible shows. So that led me to like Buckethead, exploring Primus, and this group called Melt Banana, which is my Patton's personal favorite band. Japanese 4-piece, female bass player, female front person singer, male guitar player who's a hemophiliac, who wears an air mask, so you just see this angry Japanese eyes. And then they had a few different drummers that were just monster, like incredible, fast, hard playing, like hardcore drummers. And that's noise music, but they're melodic and they do songs. They use a lot of sound effects. He uses like whammy, stutter delays. He's got 3 delay pedals set on low, medium, and they're all short delay times, but like shortest, medium, and then longer. But like brrr, ding 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 ding, that's about how they go. And he's constantly doing that, freezing those notes, and then doing the whammy. And he uses something called Maestro sample and hold. I think it's that type of effect. But oh man, is that a cool noise band. And they use a lot of sound effect samples and very intense music. Some of it is it's noise. But they also blend that with melody, which is that's what I really love, is proper blend between experimental music of noise rock, avant-garde, and blending sound effects, where you have a kind of a proper amount of both. And if you can implement them both at the same time, then it's like, achievement. So that they were the last band that really floated my boat. They had an album called Bambi's Dilemma, and then something called Cellscape. I forgot. There was a few albums toward the end of their career. They ended up breaking up. Like the front person and the guitar player were going out, and they would record tracks and play those, like played at the tracks. And it was really cool. That album that came out after the last album, I think it's really good. I haven't gotten to it yet. But for many years, there was nothing going on, like since about like 2002. Nothing new came out. And then in 2016, I ran into a band that totally restored my faith in music. And boy, did they deliver. So I'm going to talk about that band in the next video. I didn't want to make this too long. So this first video, I was just going to talk about my influences and the bands that really were my sonic foundation on who I am. And then in the second video, I'll talk about this new band that I love, and then I feel they are on that level as the aforementioned Harry Nilsson, James Bond soundtracks, the Beatles, Pink Floyd, Adrian Belew, Mike Patton, this type of stuff. There's a new player in town. Can you wait? Do you think you know who it is? I was talking about this band to someone, and they thought I was going to say Tame Impala. I wouldn't be like, I'm turning you on to this band, and it would be Tame Impala. It's like, who doesn't know who that band? Like, everybody has heard of Tame Impala by now, especially. Come on. So anyway, tune into the second video. I hope I didn't offend anyone, but yeah, that really cracked me up. Yeah, this band, they're called Kiss.